Most people move through life without ever truly asking who they are or why they live the way they do. Søren Kierkegaard believed this quiet avoidance is the greatest tragedy of human existence. He argued that every person must face anxiety, make difficult choices, and take responsibility for becoming their true self. Because according to Kierkegaard, the most important question in life is not what the world is, but what it means for you to exist within it. Søren Kierkegaard begins his philosophy with a deep concern about how people live their lives. He believed that most individuals move through life without truly understanding themselves. They follow routines, social expectations, and cultural rules without ever asking the most important question of all, which is what it means to truly exist as a human being. For Kierkegaard, philosophy was not mainly about studying the universe or building abstract systems. It was about the inner life of the individual person. During Kierkegaard's time, many philosophers were trying to create large systems that explained everything about reality. They wanted philosophy to work like a perfect structure where every idea fit neatly into a logical order. One of the most famous thinkers doing this was the German philosopher Hegel, who believed that reality followed a rational system that could be understood through reason and history. Many intellectuals admired this kind of philosophy because it promised certainty and order. Kierkegaard believed something very important was missing from these systems. They explained ideas, societies, and history, but they ignored the most important part of human life, which is the experience of the individual person. A system might explain the structure of reality, but it cannot capture what it feels like to live, to choose, to doubt, to suffer, or to believe. These experiences belong to the individual and cannot be reduced to abstract formulas. For Kierkegaard, the individual human being stands at the center of philosophy. Each person must confront life directly and make choices that shape who they become. No system can live life for you. No theory can make your decisions. Every person must face existence personally. This is why Kierkegaard placed great importance on subjectivity. By subjectivity, he did not mean that truth is simply whatever someone wants to believe. Instead, he meant that the most important truths in life are not just ideas to understand, but realities to live. A person might intellectually understand many facts about love, faith, or courage, but those ideas only become meaningful when the individual actually lives them. For example, someone might study everything about courage in books and philosophy. They might understand the definition of bravery and admire stories of heroic people. But until they face fear themselves and make a courageous choice, courage remains only an idea. It has not yet become part of their life. Kierkegaard believed that much of modern society allows people to hide from this personal responsibility. Instead of living authentically, individuals often lose themselves in the crowd. The crowd offers comfort because it removes the burden of personal choice. When you follow what everyone else is doing, you do not have to take full responsibility for your own decisions. But Kierkegaard believed the crowd is dangerous for the soul. When people lose themselves in social expectations, they stop asking who they truly are. They stop confronting the deep questions of existence. Life becomes a series of habits rather than a meaningful journey. Because of this, Kierkegaard emphasized the importance of becoming an individual. Becoming an individual does not mean isolating yourself from others or rejecting society completely. It means taking responsibility for your own life. It means recognizing that your choices shape your existence and that no one else can live your life for you. One of the central ideas in Kierkegaard's philosophy is that human life is defined by choice. Every day, people make decisions that shape their character and their future. Some choices seem small, but over time, they build the structure of a person's life. Even refusing to choose is itself a choice. Avoiding responsibility still shapes the path of existence. This constant need to choose creates a feeling that Kierkegaard described as anxiety. Anxiety is not simply fear of something specific. It is a deeper feeling that appears when a person realizes their freedom. When you understand that your life depends on your choices, you also realize that many different paths are possible. This freedom can feel overwhelming because there is no guarantee that your decisions will lead to success or happiness. Kierkegaard described anxiety as the dizziness of freedom. It is the feeling a person experiences when standing at the edge of many possibilities. You are free to move in different directions, but that freedom also means you carry responsibility for the outcome. Instead of seeing anxiety as purely negative, Kierkegaard believed it reveals something important about human existence. Anxiety shows that we are free beings capable of shaping our lives. Without freedom, there would be no anxiety, but there would also be no meaningful choice. Because of this, Kierkegaard believed that living authentically requires courage. An authentic life is not one where every decision is safe and comfortable. It is a life where a person faces their freedom honestly and accepts the responsibility that comes with it. He also believed that different people live their lives in different stages or ways of existence. These stages describe how individuals relate to life, meaning, and choice. Some people live mainly for pleasure and immediate enjoyment. Others live according to moral duties and responsibilities. And some eventually confront deeper spiritual questions about faith and existence. These stages of life do not simply describe different lifestyles. They represent different ways of understanding what it means to exist as a human being. As people grow and face new challenges, they may move from one stage to another. Through these ideas, Kierkegaard began to explore some of the deepest questions about human life. What does it mean to live authentically? Why do people feel anxiety when they face freedom? How should a person make choices in a world where certainty is impossible? These questions would later make Kierkegaard one of the most important thinkers in the development of existential philosophy. Instead of asking only what the world is made of, he asked what it means for an individual to live, choose, believe, and exist. And through this focus on the inner life of the individual, Kierkegaard opened a completely new direction in philosophy, one that begins not with abstract systems, but with the personal struggle of being human. As Kierkegaard continues exploring human existence, he begins to explain the different ways people live their lives. He believed that most individuals do not fully understand their own way of living because they move through life without reflecting deeply on their choices. To describe these different ways of existing, Kierkegaard introduced what he called stages of life. These stages are not strict categories where every person clearly belongs to one group forever. Instead, they represent different attitudes toward life, meaning, and responsibility. The first stage he described is often called the aesthetic stage of life. A person living in this stage focuses mainly on pleasure, enjoyment, and interesting experiences. Life is guided by the search for excitement, beauty, and stimulation. The aesthetic person wants life to feel entertaining and satisfying in the moment. They may seek good food, art, romance, travel, or anything that brings enjoyment. At first, this way of living can feel exciting and free. The aesthetic person avoids heavy commitments and prefers to keep life open and flexible. Responsibilities are often seen as restrictions that limit personal freedom. Instead of focusing on long-term duties, the aesthetic individual moves from one experience to another, always searching for something new. But Kierkegaard believed that this lifestyle eventually leads to a deep problem. Pleasure and excitement cannot permanently satisfy the human soul. The more someone depends on constant stimulation, the more difficult it becomes to remain satisfied. What once felt exciting slowly becomes ordinary. The search for pleasure becomes a cycle where each new experience must be stronger or more dramatic to feel meaningful. Because of this, many people living in the aesthetic stage eventually experience boredom and emptiness. Life begins to feel shallow. Even though they have enjoyed many experiences, something still feels missing. Kierkegaard believed this feeling of emptiness often pushes people toward the next stage of life. The second stage he described is the ethical stage. In this stage, a person begins to take life more seriously and focuses on responsibility, commitment, and moral choices. Instead of chasing temporary pleasure, the The ethical individual asks deeper questions about how a person should live. They think about duties, promises, and the impact of their actions on others. The ethical life involves commitment. Marriage, family responsibilities, honest work, and social duties become important parts of existence. Instead of constantly searching for new experiences, the ethical person builds a stable life based on values and responsibilities. For Kierkegaard, this stage represents an important development in human maturity. The ethical individual recognizes that life is not only about personal pleasure. It also involves responsibility toward other people and toward the moral standards that guide society. But even the ethical life has its limits. A person may live responsibly, follow moral rules, and fulfill social duties, yet still feel that something deeper remains unresolved. Ethical life focuses on doing what is right, but it does not completely answer the deepest questions about existence, meaning, and the relationship between the individual and the infinite. This leads to the third stage of existence, which Kierkegaard called the religious stage. In this stage, a person confronts the deepest questions about faith, God, and the nature of existence itself. The religious stage is not simply about belonging to a church or following religious traditions. It involves a deeply personal relationship with faith that goes beyond ordinary logic and social rules. Kierkegaard believed that faith requires what he called a leap. Human reason can analyze many things about the world, but there are limits to what reason can prove. At some point, a person must decide whether to believe even without complete certainty. This decision cannot be made by logic alone. It requires personal commitment. This idea of the leap of faith is one of Kierkegaard's most famous concepts. It describes the moment when a person moves beyond rational calculation and commits to belief. From the outside, this leap may appear irrational, but for the individual, it represents a deeply meaningful choice. Kierkegaard often used the story of Abraham from religious tradition to explain this idea. In the story, Abraham is asked by God to sacrifice his son Isaac. From a normal moral perspective, this request appears impossible to justify. Yet Abraham trusts in God and prepares to obey. For Kierkegaard, this story shows the tension between ethical rules and religious faith. In the ethical stage, a person follows universal moral laws that apply to everyone. But in the religious stage, the individual sometimes faces a personal relationship with the divine that cannot be explained by ordinary rules. Faith becomes a deeply personal commitment that goes beyond simple reasoning. This does not mean that Kierkegaard encouraged people to ignore morality or act without responsibility. Instead, he wanted to show that faith involves a personal relationship with the absolute that cannot be fully explained through human logic alone. Through these stages of life, Kierkegaard shows how human existence develops through different levels of understanding. The aesthetic stage focuses on pleasure and experience. The ethical stage focuses on responsibility and moral duty. The religious stage focuses on faith and the individual's relationship with the deeper mystery of existence. Each stage represents a different way of living and understanding the meaning of life. As people confront anxiety, choice, responsibility, and faith, they move through these stages and discover deeper dimensions of existence. In this way, Kierkegaard's philosophy becomes a journey into the inner life of the individual. It asks not only what is true, but how a person lives that truth through the choices they make and the commitments they accept. As Kierkegaard continues exploring the inner life of the individual, he begins to examine one of the deepest and most troubling experiences of human existence, which is despair. For Kierkegaard, despair is not simply sadness or temporary unhappiness. It is a deeper condition that appears when a person fails to understand or accept their true self. A person may look successful on the outside, may have comfort, social approval, and achievements, yet still experience despair within. This is because despair is not about external circumstances, but about the relationship a person has with their own existence. Kierkegaard believed that every human being is a self, but the self is not something simple or automatic. The self is a relationship that a person has with themselves. It is the awareness that you exist as an individual who must make choices and shape a life. This awareness creates both possibility and difficulty. Because humans are conscious beings, they can reflect on who they are and who they want to become. The problem is that many people try to escape this responsibility. Instead of facing their true selves, they hide behind roles, distractions, or social expectations. A person may define themselves only through their career, their social status, or the opinions of others. On the surface, this can appear stable, but it prevents the individual from developing a genuine understanding of themselves. Kierkegaard described several forms of despair that can arise when a person avoids their true self. One form of despair occurs when a person does not even realize they are in despair. This happens when someone becomes completely absorbed in ordinary life without questioning its meaning. They follow routines, pursue success, and live according to social expectations, but they never pause to reflect on who they truly are. Because they never ask deeper questions, they remain unaware of the deeper dissatisfaction within them. Another form of despair appears when a person becomes aware that something is wrong but feels powerless to change it. They recognize that their life lacks authenticity or meaning, yet they feel trapped by circumstances, habits, or fear. This awareness creates a painful tension between who they are and who they believe they should become. There is also a deeper form of despair, where a person refuses to accept their true self. Instead of embracing their existence with all its responsibilities and possibilities, they resist it. They may wish to be someone completely different or reject the conditions of their life. In this situation, the individual struggles against their own existence, creating a conflict within the self. For Kierkegaard, the solution to despair is not simply achieving external success or comfort. The solution requires a deeper transformation in how a person understands themselves. The individual must learn to accept their own existence and take responsibility for becoming their true self. This process requires honesty and courage. It means acknowledging both strengths and weaknesses. It means recognizing that life cannot be lived entirely according to the expectations of others. Each person must find their own path and make choices that reflect their deepest commitments. Kierkegaard believed that this journey toward the true self ultimately leads to faith. Without faith, the individual may feel overwhelmed by the weight of freedom and responsibility. The possibilities of life are vast, and human reason cannot provide perfect certainty about the future. Faith allows the individual to live with this uncertainty while still committing to a meaningful path. Faith does not remove anxiety or difficulty from life. Instead, it transforms the way a person relates to these experiences. Through faith, the individual recognizes that their existence has meaning beyond what can be fully explained by reason alone. This belief provides strength in moments of doubt and uncertainty. Kierkegaard often emphasized that faith is deeply personal. It cannot be forced by institutions or traditions. A person may follow religious customs for many years without truly experiencing faith. True faith requires an inward commitment that comes from the individual's relationship with the divine. This focus on inward commitment was part of Kierkegaard's criticism of organized religion in his society. During his time, many people considered themselves religious simply because they belonged to a church or followed certain traditions. Kierkegaard believed this kind of religion often lacked genuine faith. People followed social customs without confronting the personal challenge that faith requires. For Kierkegaard, authentic faith is not comfortable or easy. It involves risk and uncertainty. The individual must trust something that cannot be proven with complete logical certainty. This trust requires a leap beyond ordinary reasoning, which is why he described faith as a leap. Through this idea, Kierkegaard highlighted a central tension in human existence. People desire certainty and security, yet the deepest questions of life cannot be answered with absolute proof. Faith becomes the way individuals move forward despite this uncertainty. Kierkegaard's exploration of anxiety, despair, and faith reveals his central concern with the inner struggle of human existence. He was not interested in philosophy as a distant academic subject. For him, philosophy was about the personal drama of being human. Every individual must face freedom, make choices, confront despair, and search for meaning. By focusing on these deeply personal experiences, Kierkegaard created a new direction in philosophy that would later influence existential thinkers throughout the modern world. His work reminds us that understanding life is not only about studying ideas, but about confronting the challenges of existence itself and deciding how we will live. As Kierkegaard reaches the deepest point of his philosophy, he returns again to the individual human being and the responsibility of living a meaningful life. Everything he has discussed about anxiety, despair, faith, and choice leads to one central insight. Human existence is not something that can be understood only through abstract theories. It must be lived. Each person must face the challenge of becoming a true self. For Kierkegaard, the greatest danger in life is not suffering or difficulty. The greatest danger is living without truly becoming oneself. Many people spend their lives following expectations that come from society, family, or tradition. They adopt roles that feel safe and familiar. From the outside, their lives may appear stable and successful, yet inwardly, they may never confront the deeper question of who they truly are. To become oneself requires courage because it means facing uncertainty. Life does not offer perfect instructions or guaranteed answers. When a person realizes this, they must decide how to move forward without complete certainty. This situation creates the anxiety that Kierkegaard described earlier. Anxiety is the feeling that appears when we recognize our freedom and the many possibilities that lie before us. Instead of avoiding this anxiety, Kierkegaard believed individuals should learn to face it honestly. Anxiety reveals that life is open and that the future has not been fully determined. Within this openness lies the possibility of creating a meaningful existence through conscious choice. Freedom may feel uncomfortable at times, but it also allows individuals to shape their lives in ways that reflect their deepest values. Kierkegaard also believed that becoming a true self involves accepting the tension that exists within human life. Human beings are both limited and capable of great imagination. They live in time, yet think about eternity. They are physical creatures, yet possess a mind that searches for meaning. This tension between limitation and possibility creates much of the struggle that people experience. Rather than trying to escape this tension, Kierkegaard believed it must be embraced. A person becomes stronger and more authentic when they accept the complexity of existence. Instead of pretending that life is simple and predictable, they acknowledge uncertainty and still choose to live with commitment and purpose. Faith plays an important role in this final stage of Kierkegaard's philosophy. Faith is not merely believing certain ideas or repeating religious words. For Kierkegaard, faith is a deeply personal trust that gives meaning to existence even when reason cannot provide complete certainty. It is the decision to live with confidence in something greater than the limited understanding of a human mind. This faith allows the individual to face despair and anxiety without being destroyed by them. When a person trusts that life has deeper meaning, they can continue living with hope even during moments of doubt and difficulty. Faith does not remove the struggles of life, but it gives them a context that makes them bearable. Kierkegaard believed that this inward relationship with faith transforms how a person sees the world. Life is no longer simply a series of external events. It becomes a personal journey of becoming. Each decision, each challenge, and each moment of reflection becomes part of the process through which the individual grows into a fuller understanding of themselves. Another important idea in Kierkegaard's final reflections is that truth is not only something to be known, but something to be lived. A person might study philosophy for many years and understand complex ideas about existence. But if those ideas never influence how they live, then they remain empty knowledge. True understanding appears when ideas shape the way a person acts and chooses. For this reason, Kierkegaard often spoke about the difference between knowing something intellectually and existing within that truth. Knowing about love is not the same as loving someone. Knowing about courage is not the same as acting courageously. In the same way, knowing about faith is not the same as living with faith. His philosophy, therefore, calls each individual to a deeper level of responsibility. It is not enough to observe life from a distance or to discuss ideas without commitment. Each person must decide how they will live and what values will guide their existence. This decision cannot be made by society or by philosophy alone. It must come from the individual's own inward choice. Through these reflections, Kierkegaard presented a powerful vision of human existence. Life is not a fixed path determined by external forces. It is an open journey shaped by freedom, responsibility, and the courage to confront uncertainty. Anxiety, despair, and doubt are not merely problems to eliminate. They are signs that the individual is aware of the depth and seriousness of existence. When a person faces these experiences honestly and chooses to live with authenticity, they move closer to becoming their true self. This process may never be perfectly completed, because human life is always developing and changing. Yet the effort to live authentically gives life its deepest meaning. In this way, Kierkegaard's philosophy places the individual at the center of existence. Each person must confront freedom, make choices, struggle with doubt, and search for faith. There is no system that can replace this personal journey. The meaning of life emerges through the decisions individuals make and the courage with which they face the challenges of being human. Through his focus on the inner life of the individual, Kierkegaard helped open the path for modern existential thought. He reminded later thinkers that philosophy is not only about explaining the world, but about understanding what it means to live within it. And in that understanding lies the ongoing task of becoming truly oneself.